All right, Nick, let's talk about the Los Angeles Rams. Big win this week for the Rams. Going into this weekend, people might think we can chill. There's not going to be a lot of news going on with the Rams, but that is not the case. The Rams potentially are gearing up to make an absolutely massive move. I think it would be great for them for the future. I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I referred to earlier, the Rams have been gearing up for potentially a big trade that I think would be great for them going forward. Let's get into the article, and then we can talk more about this all on the other side. This, of course, is over on from ESPN. It says, the Rams and cornerback Tre'Davious White are discussing options for his future, including a potential trade, sources told ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, very reputable source, on Saturday. The former All-Pro has been inactive for the Rams' past 2 games, a move made after Darius Williams returned from a hamstring injury. The Rams are open to keeping White, knowing things can change over a long season, or they could look to move him to a team with a cornerback need, the sources told Fowler. Rams coach Sean McVay said earlier in the month that White has handled the situation as a pro in every sense of the word. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to unpack here, Nick. I think this could be big for the Rams if they decide to go ahead and move White. Curious what your thoughts are, but before we get to you, Nick, Rams fans, in the comment section below, I think this could be an interesting move for the Rams, a big trade going towards the future of this already very young team. Draft capital, always really beneficial. But let us know, what are your thoughts? A, do you want them to trade Tre'Davious White? And B, if you do, what do you think would be a good offer for him? Let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think about this news for the Rams?
I think it's a really good decision by the Rams for a number of reasons. This is the ultimate opportunity to sell high on Tre'Davious White, and I say that with relative terms. Obviously, White's not the guy he was at his prime, especially when he was with the Buffalo Bills pre-ACL injury. But he's still a veteran corner who can still get the job done. He's a very smart, savvy player. Obviously, in the limited action over the first, I believe, 4 games for the Rams, he did okay, nothing spectacular. But he is still a guy who knows how to play cornerback in the NFL. And there are contenders in the National Football League, and we see this every couple years or so that just get a rash of injuries at one position on defense. Sometimes it's linebacker, sometimes it's safety, sometimes in a lot of cases it'll be corner. And teams that run out of corners, no matter how good you are as a defense, if you don't have enough corners in today's NFL, your season's basically done as a contender, because you got to have guys that can cover people, especially if you look at some of the top contenders in football. The Lions, of course, have an army of playmakers when healthy. The Ravens have a lot of guys. The Bengals have a lot of guys. The Chiefs, maybe by the playoff run, they may have 4 or 5 top receivers. So no matter what conference you're in, you're going to need a bunch of corners that you trust. If you have a lot of injuries, now is the time to address it. And everyone looks at Tre'Davious White as a guy who, push come to shove, he's not as good as he once was, but he can get the job done. And anyone who's desperate is willing to overpay for a guy like Tre'Davious White this time of year. And I think the Rams, by being very public about it, by being very clear about it, are saying, listen, we're willing to move off of him. We trust our young guys. We're taking a little bit of a different approach here. We'll get White to one of these contenders that maybe is down a couple corners that needs a veteran guy to fill in there, and we'll be willing to get something in return for him. And that also speaks to a little change in strategy from the Rams that we've seen over the past couple years. In the very beginning of this sort of Rams-Snead-McVay run, they famously, didn't care about draft picks, They were trading every first-round pick they possibly could just to bring as many veteran players. We're seeing a shift in the Rams strategy. This is what they do, They zig when everyone else is zagging. Earlier on, when they didn't care about draft picks nearly as much, everything they did was, when they were dumping all their draft picks, was trying to get veteran players, because other teams, the competition, were overvaluing draft picks. Now the other way has shifted. Teams are overvaluing veteran players and giving up a lot of capital to bring in, I don't want to say a washed-up guy, but a guy who's not nearly as good as he once was. The Rams are taking advantage of that opportunity. That's what the smart teams do. That's what the Chiefs did. That's what the Patriots and their Bill Belichick did. McVay, Les Snead, obviously one of the smarter organizations in football. They understand the zag in the NFL right now is veteran players overvalued. The Rams get Tre'Davious White and say, listen, we can find someone who's willing to overpay for this guy, especially considering White's on a very team-friendly deal, 1-year deal. His contract's up after this year. There's going to be a lot of contenders that want one more veteran corner that I think may be willing to give up a decent amount of draft capital. Nothing redonkulous, but still a mid-round pick. Nothing terrible, nothing to sneeze at there. I think the Rams, again, they're taking a different approach than the rest of the National Football League, and it's a smart move to make.
Yeah, Nick, and we see these veteran teams. We see White. White, if we're being honest, he's not the future of anybody's team, and that's just plain and simple. It's not going to happen that way. But I like the comment you make. It makes me think of an old lyric where they say, "Not as good as I once was, but I could be good once as I ever was." So White, with these contenders, he's not going to be a future of anybody's team, but he's a very serviceable guy to come in for the rest of this season for a team, like a 1-year type rental for White, for him to come on, give you some key veteran depth. Even if he had to start, he might not be your number one guy, but he's good enough to get you through the season to the playoff run, like you said. So some of these teams who've been banged up at corner, you look at the Ravens, they lost like 3 corners this year already. You mentioned some of the contenders. Be a team, maybe looking for a corner, maybe looking for someone to come in, a veteran guy in a defense that's really, been pretty beneficial to older guys in the past. I think there's a lot of teams out there who, like you said, have been banged up at the corner position. Now they need a little bit of depth. Tre'Davious White is the perfect option here because the Rams are going to get something for a guy that's not the future of their team that they don't really even need right now. You're going to get a decent draft pick for him. Like you said, nothing crazy, but something decent. And all of these teams, Tre'Davious White isn't washed up yet. He's not at the top of his game, so they're going to feel like they're getting a deal for White, a guy the Rams don't need, and they're getting a player who is absolutely serviceable at his position. This is the best trade piece for the Rams to not gut their entire team going forward. Hear the rumors about Cooper Kupp. I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon. I think this is a guy that would absolutely gut the team if they traded him, but Tre'Davious White, on the other hand, that's a guy that I think you trade him and never look back from it.
Yeah, one final point to end on here. One thing I'm going to give the Rams a lot of credit with their potential trade of Tre'Davious White. I think it'll actually happen. I think whoever picks him up, I think there's going to be some team that's going to want to add him to their roster. The Rams right now, according to PFF, are 30th, third to last in the NFL in coverage grade. Now, that doesn't mean Tre'Davious White's the solution to the problem. Clearly, he's not. White hasn't played the last handful of games, and they've actually gotten a little bit better in that regard. But that shows that the Rams, Les Snead, Sean McVay, are very smart, right? They're not sitting there, oh my gosh, we're really struggling. We got to make sure we hold on to everybody in the secondary. They're like, no, we got some issues in the secondary. We got to clean up. We got some injuries, but we know this guy isn't the answer. Even though we have problems at his position group, we're not going to make the dumb decision to hold on too long to a guy we're not even using. Again, smart strategy here by the Rams. This is just another example why McVay, Les Snead are among the smartest decision makers in the National Football League.